we are on.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. As Jen said, I'm Gary Pavlis. I'm the Atlantic County Agricultural Agent. I've been down in Atlantic County for 36 years now. My main crop is blueberries. You know, within about half an hour of my office, there's 8,000 acres of blueberries. So that was my main crop. But then I work in all the small fruit crops. I'm hoping that you have the handout. I kind of call it a Master Gardener cheat sheet for small fruit. And what I like to say is that, you know, I spent 4 years as an undergraduate at Rutgers getting my Bachelor of Science. Then I went to the University of Arkansas, and I was a research assistant there, and I got my master's. We were breeding blackberries, strawberries, blueberries, grapes, and peaches. And I spent 5 years there, got my master's, and then I came back and to Rutgers and spent 4 years on research for blueberries and got my PhD. And so basically I was in college for 13 years, and everything I know is on this piece of paper. So as a result, this is basically a $50,000 piece of paper. So, you know, I hope you have some respect for this, the fact that this is a very expensive piece of paper. But it has, you know, all kinds of information, soil pH, varieties. It should really answer 90% of all the questions that you might have about small fruit. So I'm going to try to load my my slides. Okay, there she is. And you notice at the bottom there, that's basically something new, and a new logo that everybody's putting on. And we are here when you need us. You know, in this COVID-19 thing, people are kind of thinking that because maybe the Cape May office is closed, that you can't call us, you can't ask us questions, we can't give you. Well, that's not true. So we monitor all the phones, we can answer your questions. So we are still here for you. You know, I'm working every day, I'm in the office every day, I'm in the field most days. So so I just wanted to kind of let you know that. Okay, so this is my first slide. You know, I like to read this about small fruits as well. So what do we learn from cows, buffaloes, and elephants? It's impossible to reduce weight by eating green grass and salads and walking. So that's one reason why I think we should keep small fruits in mind. So, you know, why would you grow small fruit crops? I mean, it's interesting that people have gardens and they think about tomatoes and they think about pansies, but well, you know, they often don't think about small fruit crops. This is a slide that I took many years ago up in a place in Monmouth County called Delicious Orchards, and if you can actually see my pointer, it says fresh raspberries $3.99 on the right there, and I bought one of these and I brought it home, and it had 17 raspberries in it. You know, you don't stop eating raspberries because you're tired of eating raspberries. You stop eating because you've run out of them, and they're too expensive. So realize that we can have varieties of raspberries, blackberries that start producing in mid-June and will run right through October into first frost. So you know, you could be having raspberries the whole year. So, you know, that's one reason why you would grow what we call brambles, which is raspberries, black raspberries, and blackberries. Another is, and this may be a shock to you, but most of you have never actually tasted a strawberry. When you go to ShopRite, Acme, there's these packages from California, and it says strawberries on it. It's a lie. Okay. You see, strawberries should not be green on the top and green on the bottom and white in the middle and hollow in the middle. Okay. You see, hollow has no flavor. You can test this for yourself. If you just open your mouth right now, you see there's no flavor. Okay, well, see, that's what's inside a California strawberry. The main criteria for picking California varieties is it's hard enough that if they pick it and put it on the road, they can roll it to New Jersey and it still looks like a strawberry. But as a result, the word flavor never comes into their minds. So a strawberry is supposed to be red all the way through, all right? And as a result, you have never looked like this young lady when you've eaten a strawberry, okay? And it's interesting that I even see, like, in restaurants that they've taken to, like, cutting them in very ingenious ways now to make them look pretty, this is what you do with something that doesn't taste that good anyway, This was actually a grad student of mine, and when I was in Arkansas, she became the horticulture department head at Clemson University. I saw her at a meeting about 4 years ago, and I said to her that I use this slide all the time. She told me her lawyer would be calling me, but I never heard from the lawyer, so I guess I'm okay. The next is you can use these small fruit crops in your landscape. Okay, these are blueberries blooming, and we are right there right now. I mean, this is what blueberries look like right now. Beautiful blooms, lily of the valley almost type blooms, right? But even in the winter, the canes are red, the canes are gold, and if you've got a landscape that has rhododendrons and azaleas, blueberries fit right in. They all need the same requirements. And from a soil standpoint. So, and you can put strawberries in hanging baskets. You can put raspberries on your patio in pots. You can put strawberries in pots. You can put blueberries in pots if you just want to grow a few. They really lend themselves to small areas and to your landscape. The other thing is I really feel like it's important for small kids to understand that food actually comes from a plant. If you have grandchildren or children, kids love small fruit crops. I mean, they love strawberries, they love blueberries. I mean, when my daughter was this young girl's age, I would bring home blueberries and put them on the kitchen table. She would sit down, and I was hoping to have some the next morning on my cereal, but they were gone, and I actually had to take to hiding some from her so I would have them on my cereal. But it's important for us to understand that plants actually come from a plant and a farm. All my relatives were Ukrainian. And they came over on the boat, and they ended up in Ellis Island, and they only ended up getting as far as Jersey City. And I know that they believed all food comes from the ShopRite. Farming had no part in it whatsoever. And so, well, why is this important? Well, because a heck of a lot of rules and laws that govern farms are made by people that have no idea what farming is. And so you constantly see these really stupid rules that really affect how they do their operation and as a result in more higher food costs. So what are we going to be talking about? Well, this is something here. This is called a strawberry. Strawberry. You've never seen it. You've never tasted it. Okay. If you cut this open, it is bright red all the way through. All right, and the aroma is incredible. And no, you can't play softball with it. Okay, it's not hard, and it's about flavor. Okay. Um, we're going to talk about blueberries. The blueberry industry was invented in New Jersey. Blueberries are the state fruit of New Jersey. The industry was invented by a woman, and we'll talk about that. But so this is a very important crop, as you probably all know, in New Jersey. Raspberries, as I mentioned, there's hardly anything better than going out and just picking raspberries and pop them in your mouth. And they all have different flavors, and we'll talk a lot about that. And then the last thing we'll talk about is grapes, and that's another thing. When you think about seedless grapes, all you can think about is California, Thompson seedless, which is the green one, and Flame seedless, which is the red one, which are basically wet sugar balls. And they, again, have very little flavor. We have a whole host of grape varieties, seedless grape varieties, that are incredible flavors. And we've gotten used to, Thompson seedless. Everybody thinks of the only seedless grape is Thompson seedless. Oh, my God. So, we're going to do much better than that. All right. So, what should we start with? Well, the first thing we have to realize is that small fruit crops require a very specific site. So, a variety of any of these that grows well in Missouri or North Carolina or Kansas, more than likely is not going to do well in New Jersey. Okay. That's one reason why on this $50,000 sheet, you have varieties listed here. And you may have to do some digging to find these varieties. Home Depot probably won't have these varieties. Home Depot has a corporate office someplace, and it's not New Jersey. And they buy plants for all their Home Depots, and I suppose that variety is good for someplace, but 99 times out of 100, it's not for New Jersey. Now, this picture is in the Napa Valley. This is a specific site. This site does very well for Cabernet Sauvignon. Now, one of my passions is wine and grapes. Most of the, I have a 3,000 bottle wine cellar. I lead trips to Tuscany. I never go anywhere that doesn't make wine. I'm sure Scotland is probably a nice place, but I'm never going there. It doesn't make wine. So this place is really known for Cabernet Sauvignon, and so this is a very specific site, and that is very important. So when you get a seed catalog or a nursery catalog, it will always have this USDA map in there. All right. And under any of the varieties, they're going to talk about this map. And what it is, it's broken up into zones. Now, what I usually ask a Master Gardener class is, what is the number one thing that denotes where anything can be grown? Most people think, well, it's the soil or something like that. No. The number one thing is winter temperatures. All right. If I go down today and I drive down to Florida and dig up a palm tree and bring it back up here and plant it in front of the Cape May Cooperative Extension Building, it'll be fine in June and July and August, September and October and November. And then the winter sets in and it's dead. Okay. So these zones are set up as a temperature. All right. So here's the zones in New Jersey. People tell me, I live in New Jersey. So what varieties? You're not telling me anything by saying you live in New Jersey. um, there are many zones in New Jersey. For instance, do you realize that Sussex County has a 60 days shorter growing season than Cape May does? 60 days. All right. Many parts of Cape May haven't been below zero in 20, 30 years. All right. Where Sussex County goes down to -10, -15 all the time. So what you can grow in Cape May is much different than what you grow in Sussex. For instance, if somebody calls me and says they want to start a winery in Sussex County, what I usually tell them is move. That's really not going to work. Okay, it's just too cold. It's just too cold. So the zones are set up in these temperatures, and if you see right around in the middle there, you see 5A and 5B, and the right-hand column, it's in Fahrenheit. So 5A, the lows are between -15 and -20. 5B is -15, minus 10 to 15, right? But Cape May is more like 7A, all right? So and 7B. So the thing is there's quite a difference. And I like to think of it as like, for instance, with grapes, if you were an artist in Cape May, your palette of colors or varieties is everyone under the sun. And in Sussex County, you basically have black and white. Okay, so that kind of tells you the difference. This is the most up-to-date plant hardiness zone map of New Jersey. All right, and you could see that we've got that 7A, 7B all the way down to Cape May there. And so in Cape May, we are in really good shape. I mean, and in fact, I had done research 25, well, more like 30 years ago now, that basically showed Cape May, from a grape standpoint, is the best place to grow grapes in the East. Better than Long Island, better than Virginia. And so I talked to the then owner of Cape May winery. They weren't a winery yet. He just grew chrysanthemums. And Bill Hayes was his name. And I said, listen, I think we should be growing grapes here and not chrysanthemums. So I bought a few plants, grape plants, and he planted them. They were doing very well. So then he expanded it to 3 acres, then 5 acres. Then he actually sold it to the Craigs. And now, of course, Cape May Winery is a fantastic winery down there. And then you've got a whole bunch of other wineries down in Cape May. So, and it's because, you don't have to deal with these winter temperatures. Okay, so the other thing we have to realize is, there's a heck of a range of soil pHs in New Jersey. We run pH tests in my office here. And last year, we had a range of 2.8 to 8.2, okay? 2.8, I wouldn't want to walk on that soil in bare feet, okay? Probably take your skin off. And then, at 8.2, you'd probably hit it and slide and fall down. So almost everything that typically that we grow is in this range of 6 to 6.5. But I want you to realize that the pH affects the availability of all the nutrients. You notice that the big boys, the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, calcium, magnesium, as the pH goes down, all these become less and less available, all right? And the micronutrients, iron, manganese, boron, copper, zinc, they all become a little more available, all right? The one bad one that also becomes more available as the pH goes down is aluminum. And a lot of plants can't handle aluminum. So what does that mean to all of us? Well, it's funny how a lot of people just feel like their site, their property, their soil is probably perfect for everything. Well, it's probably not perfect for everything. And as a result, one of the first things we should always get is a soil test. And, you can get the soil test through our office in Cape May. The other is small fruit crops need water. They cannot really be under water stress. a strawberry is close to 80% water. All right. So as a result, they need, and if you look at your $50,000 sheet, it says water requirement down there near the bottom, 2 inches every 7 to 10 days. Well, how do you know that you've given the plants 2 inches in the 7 to 10 day period? Well, one of the things that I love to do is you go to Home Depot, you go to Lowe's, and you buy yourself for $3.95 a rain gauge, and that way you can monitor how much rain you actually got. I mean, what are you going to do? Go by the news in Philadelphia? Well, in Philadelphia they got an inch and a half. I mean, there's no way that the same amount that you got is the same amount that they got in Philadelphia. So with that rain gauge, if you got an inch and a half over that period, you put the sprinklers on, and when it gets another half inch, you turn the sprinklers off. Okay, so it's a really good way to keep these plants from going under any kind of water stress, and that's important. So we already talked about needing a soil test, but there are all kinds of soils in New Jersey, that's for sure. I'm originally from Bergen County. For the most part, we really didn't have soil. Bergen County is where the glacier stopped, and basically most of what we had up there was a little bit of clay. Well, basically what we had is a whole bunch of rocks held together with a little bit of clay. And but a clay soil, it's good to know what kind of soil you have, because a clay soil is going to hold nutrients and hold water longer. Okay. And a sandy soil is not going to do that. A sandy soil, water's going to go through it pretty quick. Nutrients are going to go through it pretty quick. So what does that mean? Well, that means that if you're going to fertilize, all right, in a clay soil, you could pretty much do it once or twice, and the plants are going to get it almost like spoon feeding it. But in a sandy soil, it's much better to do a little bit, maybe once a week. All right. And when you water, there's no sense in the sandy soil dumping a lot of water on, because the water is going to go straight through. The Chinese are going to have it in 2 days. So as a result, the best thing to do is to, again, a little bit every single couple days. But it's good to know that. So when you do a soil test, they'll tell you what kind of soil type you have. We did research in Arkansas with blueberry varieties, because my major professor down in Arkansas got his PhD at Rutgers, and when he was leaving, he knew that New Jersey was all into blueberries, and he said, maybe we can grow those things down in Arkansas. So he took all our varieties, brought them to Arkansas. And so when I got down there, we had to do research, because the soil type down there was not like it is in New Jersey. And so we did research with regard to mulch. And here you've got a 4-year-old blueberry plant, and it wasn't mulched. And you could see that it grew 2 feet. And we just kept the weeds off by hoeing it, all right? And then here we've mulched this plant, and you can see the plant is 4 feet high, okay? And so mulching does some great things for small fruit crops. The breakdown of this stuff adds to the organic matter. It actually releases nitrogen into the soil. It holds water better. And when it really gets hot in the summer, it actually decreases the temperature of the root zone, which is very important. So mulch is very good. What kind of mulch? Well, I always say the best mulch you can get is whatever you can get for nothing, right? But the only caveat to that is you have to be careful, again, with the pH of the mulch. A lot of these tree companies go around grinding up trees. I mean, if you tell them that you want those chips, they'll give them to you. I've just had somebody they were doing the electric lines near my house 3 days ago, and they said, do you want the chips? So they gave me this big pile of chips. But you got to check the pH of these things. All right. I mean, if you've got a plant that needs 6 to 6.5, and the pH of the mulch is at 5, you're going to have some problems with that, and so you're going to need to throw some more lime on there. All right. People love, for instance, the mushroom soils from Pennsylvania. Those pHs of those things are often around 8, around 8. Very little things grow around 8, I got to tell you. So it really, they really hype it up. Oh, this is great stuff, high organic matter, you know, and cow manure, they use horse manure in there and everything. And but the bottom line is the pH is way off. So you may create more problems than you started with here. We're going to talk about controlling insects and diseases. For the most part, we don't have a whole lot of problems with, especially insects, with small fruit crops. Okay, so you're really not going to have to spray for that. From a disease standpoint, we're going to talk about some cultural methods to really cut down on the amount of disease that we have. Okay, and so that's going to be very important. We already talked about that we don't really deal with insects too much. You've got the Japanese beetle. You know, one of the things I always tell people is, I mean, the last thing you want to do is go to Home Depot or Lowe's and get yourself these Japanese beetle bag-a-bug things, you know, because you realize that thing has a pheromone in it that will draw the beetles from a quarter-mile away. All right. So, so that's not a good idea. That people put them actually in the middle of their roses, and they think, well, this will trap them. Well, it traps a whole lot of them, yeah. But you know, the ones it doesn't get eat your roses. You know, so so what I always say is, what you need to do is maybe if you have a Japanese beetle problem, is maybe buy one of these things, and then go to that neighbor that you know that you really don't get along with that well. You know. And just, you know, knock on their door and just say, listen, you know, there was a sale at Home Depot for these Japanese beetle traps. And so I bought one for you, no charge. There you go. And then that neighbor puts it in the backyard. And now all the Japanese beetle from a quarter-mile away will go to her backyard. And then you won't ever have a problem. So the next thing is I already mentioned the soil test. This is how I take a soil test. I have a probe, and the probe is 18 inches, and it's hollow in the middle, and you push it all the way down, and actually then you get a core sample, and it's really good for doing that. And so this again, it just brings up the idea that you know, you really need to do a soil test. It's people you know run into all kinds of problems with their garden and stuff, and when they ask questions, they sort of jump to question 27, and your first question should always be to them and to yourselves: did I do a soil test? No. Well, then you got to do that to know where you stand. Okay. Now this is a pretty old slide. The guys out there may notice that I'm wearing a members only jacket. This at the time was my very favorite jacket. I mean, it's a really nice jacket. But you know, I had my daughter when she was like 12 or 13. I put this jacket on, and she goes, you know that when girls get to be like 12 or 13, they are now fashion experts. Okay. And so she says to me, Dad, you can't wear that anymore. So as a result, my members only jacket has now been in the closet for like 15, 20 years. But I hear it's coming back, so I'm probably going to be putting it on real soon, you know. Jen, was there a question? Did I see one pop up?
Yeah, there was one about some black bugs on strawberries.
Yeah, okay, we'll get there.
We'll get there, and if we don't address it, they can email me some photos so we can ID them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are thrips. Okay. So, you know, when we start talking about problems with crops, you know, a lot of people kind of shotgun it. Is it insect, disease, nutrition, weather? You know, um, this is largely what I do with farmers. Is diagnose problems, and I find it's much better um, to take this thing logically, one thing at a time. And one thing I do is look at it from a nutrition standpoint first. Okay, um, and that is that you realize that nitrogen, for instance, or all the nutrients actually, do the exact same thing with lettuce as they do with a sequoia tree. They have the exact same function. All right. So as a result, the symptoms are often very similar. So so the one thing we did is I was the teaching assistant in horticulture department when I was getting the PhD, and we ran a test for the students. And what it was we had one table where we gave lettuce all the nutrients. We had another table where there was all the nutrients but no nitrogen, and another table no phosphorus, and on and on. And the students had to keep track of like how it was growing, what did it look like. Well, it came out very well. So I always copied these slides and kept these slides. So let's talk a little bit about nutrient deficiency. Nitrogen is very easy. Nitrogen, the plant will be dwarfed and less green, start to turn yellow, etc. So that's typical with just all crops. All right. Uh-oh. Magnesium. Let's see. Did I skip one? No. Okay. Magnesium. This is a real easy one. Okay. If you notice the leaf on the right, the veins are green. Okay. But in between the veins, it's turned a lighter green, a yellow, or a white. Right. So that's typical of magnesium. Magnesium deficiency is going to be like in the older part of the plant, and in between the green veins, plants will turn yellow, or they'll turn red, or they'll turn different things. But the veins stay green. Okay, so that's very typical. So when you see green veins and the leaf turning at some other color, right away you should think magnesium. This is phosphorus. When you get a soil test back from South Jersey here, the phosphorus is always going to say it's really high. Well, that's because it's in the soil really high, but it winds up that phosphorus in South Jersey is all tied up and unavailable. So just because it looks like it's high in the soil doesn't mean that you don't fertilize with phosphorus. Okay, and if you don't, then you end up getting a deficiency. Again, the leaves will be smaller, but they often will turn like a darker green, almost sometimes a bluish green. All right, so that's typical phosphorus. Potassium. Potassium's main function is water uptake. Okay, so often what you'll see is the edge of the leaves will be dying, because it looks like it needs water. Of course, people see that and they go, well, I'll dump more water on it. And of course, then what happens is you get into root rot problems. All right. So, but that's the main function of potassium. And now boron, we run into a lot in South Jersey. And so what's boron main function? It's cell division. So wherever the plant is actively growing, all right, you're going to see a deficiency. So for instance, in this lettuce, the plant on the left that's complete, we know that lettuce in the heart is very compact, right? And you can see how dense these leaves are in the middle here. But when you have boron deficiency, in the middle, there's actually a hole there, okay? Because the growing point can't grow without the boron. So what effect does that have on like strawberries and blueberries, et cetera? Well, strawberries, you'll actually get deformed fruit because that's cell division. The stolons that are growing from strawberries, the end will die back a little bit. Blueberries, the end of the top of the cane will actually die back just a little bit. in grapes, there's a tendril that grabs onto things. You've seen it, these little tendrils grab on. That will die back and be a little black. So that's kind of classic boron deficiency. So these are the kind of things that you may see, and these, just remember it, because these symptoms are the same no matter what kind of plant you use. So let's get into raspberries. All right, real pretty shot of the drupelets. It's called actually drupelets. Each one of those little bumps there of the raspberries. So this shot, the top berry there is called Titan, and the bottom one is Heritage. And this brings up the fact that raspberries fall into two categories. One is called June bearers. So, they come in June and July. And the bottom one, Heritage, is what they call a everbearer. So they grow, they put out a spring crop and they put out a fall crop. All right. And so there's two kind of categories of raspberries. Now, Titan, we don't recommend anymore because this was released from Cornell 25, 30 years ago. And it winds up that it is very, very susceptible to root rot. But that does bring up the fact that you cannot plant brambles, raspberries, blackberries, etc., in a wet site. Okay. All these small fruit crops need some full sun, and you can't put any of them in a wet site. So when you got the low part of your field, low part of your farm, low part of your yard, that's not where you put the small fruits. All right, it's better that actually you supply most of the water than there's any standing water. Yes.
Could you just explain what you mean by full sun? How many hours is that?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would want to. A lot of
people ask me, like, well, they say, well, I get morning sun. Is it okay to plant this here?
Right. I would like, I would like, well, minimum of 4 hours. I would say at least 4 to 6 hours. Okay. If it's just morning sun, that's not going to be that good, So I would say 4 to 6 hours is really what I'm talking about. Okay. So this is a raspberry called Reveille, and it's called Reveille because Reveille is in the morning, and so this is the one that will come in basically June 15th, and what we're going to talk about with all of these different crops is that you shouldn't be planting one variety. All of these things you should be thinking about having an early, a mid-season, and a late and variety at least. Okay, and because you want to expand your growing and harvest season. And the other neat thing is that they all don't taste the same. I mean, there's going to be different flavors as you go through the season. And that's a cool thing. I mean, that you're going to get all these different flavors throughout the season. So Reveille is a really good early one. This one is called Latham, and that's on your sheet also. I think, yes. And Latham is what I found when I did my research here, is in a wet season it produces good berries, in a dry season it's good berries. So as a result, it is nice from that standpoint. Here's one called Fall Gold. Really different kind of flavor. Fall Gold has almost like a peachy apricot flavor. When it really gets ripe, it gets more like apricots. And when I grew this, what I would do is I'd pick a couple quarts, put them into a gallon jar, put some sugar in there, put some vodka in there, keep it for about 2 months, and then put it through cheesecloth, and then you've got this Fall Gold liqueur that is incredible. You put that over ice cream, I think you died and went to heaven. So this is really a nice variety. Here's two others, Caroline, really nice size berry, and Josephine. They came out of actually a breeding program at USDA in Maryland. So Really, really, again, beautiful flavors, beautiful flavors. Now, this is a variety that came out of Cornell. It's called Royalty. And what they did was they crossed a black raspberry with a red raspberry, and they got this purple one. But the cool thing is that if you look on the right there, if you pick it early, it tastes more like a red raspberry, and if you pick it late, it tastes more like a black raspberry, and then you kind of got a little both in the middle. So you'll start to find when you like it the best. I like it the best when it's really fully ripe and it turns into more of a purpley black. Then it's yummy. That's a technical word, yummy. And so you can see this came out of Cornell, and see this thing wasn't even named yet. Back then it was called NY632, but this was an early shot. Then in the middle of the season, we like to get into some blackberries. And this is one called Arapaho. A lot of these Indian name ones are from Arkansas, actually. They've had an incredible breeding program for a long time. I got down there in 1975, and my major professor that had gotten there from Rutgers, he was actually 1/4 Cherokee. So the first one he released was Cherokee, and big berries, great flavor, really productive. Problem is the thorns on it were like as big as your pinky. And so people would get in there and pick, and they'd need a transfusion afterward because they had got scratched so bad. So my actually master's thesis work was to try to help figure out how to make these things thornless, and which we did. There was a really crummy variety out of Texas called Merton Thornless, but it was thornless. And what we realized is that when you have a blackberry seed and it germinates, the first two cotyledons often have hairs on the edge of the cotyledon, but some of them don't have hairs on them. And so we thought, well, I wonder if the ones without hairs will end up thornless. So what we did was we made a lot of crosses, and then we would count the hairs on the cotyledons, and then mark that one, and then plant it out in the field, and then count how many thorns it was. And so I had all these students counting the hairs on the cotyledons. I suppose most of them went blind, but then what we found out is the ones that had no hairs were thornless. So as a result, from then on, you didn't plant the ones out in the field that had hairs. All you did was plant the ones that didn't have hairs. So as a result, you sped up the selection of thornless blackberries big time. So now all of them that they release are thornless. So these are really good varieties. This is a black raspberry. I suppose many of you have never really tasted a black raspberry. It's funny that they're big in Pennsylvania, and then I do consulting down in Maryland and Virginia, and the pick your own down there are more likely to be growing black raspberries than raspberries. And when I get in black raspberry patch, I got to tell you, I mean, you've got to haul me out of there, because I mean, I will just eat and eat and eat. Fantastic flavors. Maybe you know about it. There's a liqueur made in France called Chambord. And Chambord is from the Loire Valley, and Chambord is 100% black raspberries. It's just fabulous. I mean, you put that on ice cream, oh my goodness, So really nice stuff. So this is sort of a breakdown of this thing. Brambles ripening season. Here's our friend Reveille all the way up here, and you can see I've got on the bottom June through October. So you got Reveille is a red, Latham is a red, Bristol, here's your black raspberry, Jewel is black raspberry. Then you got that purple one, Royalty, right? Then you get into the blackberries, Apache, Arapaho, Navajo. Now you get into the everbearers, Caroline, Jacqueline, Heritage, Josephine. So, now you don't need to grow all of these. You know, if you had the Reveille and you had, say, a Bristol and uh, maybe you know one of the blackberries, right? And then one of the new Caroline or the Josephines. You know, you're going to pick from June to October, which is fabulous. It's really fabulous. Okay, and I got to tell you, you are going to have to pick every 2 to 3 days because they when they get overripe, you could you know they start to go. So here's again the Bristols. Okay, and I mean they put out a nice crop. They're not big though. All right, we have to get away from that California thinking that everything has to be big. See, they've decided big is better than tastes good. All right, it's not. All right, tastes good is better than big, and if you can have both, great. But tastes good is number one. All right, so this is a plot of heritage. A friend of mine actually used to be the biggest raspberry grower in New Jersey up at Delicious Orchards. And so, the way you prune, this is a heritage that's an everbearer. We've realized that even though it gets a crop in the spring and the fall, there's very little crop in the spring. So what we tell people is we're just going to eliminate that crop. And what we do is right after I took this shot, he went over it with a brush hog. And so the best way to prune everbearers is just cut them to the ground. Okay. And so, of course, it doesn't get easier than that, right? Just cut them to the ground. And one thing you want to do is keep the rows narrow, right? 1.5 to 2 feet. You know, whenever you see any kind of bramble in somebody's backyard, they've let it go and it got wider and wider and wider, right? And one thing that does is increase disease problems because you get all these dead leaves down there, maybe some unpicked fruit, etc., and that builds up the disease, you know. And you know, in the old thorny ones, what would happen is would get wider and wider and wider and thicker, and you know, you start losing little dogs in there and stuff. And so you know, you don't want to do that. So here's a shot showing you really what we need to do. The June bearers, what we try to do is trellis them, and you want to do that because that way you keep the fruit away from the ground. The ground is where the fungus is. All right, and by keeping them up like that. They're going to get a lot less fungus, which means a lot less need to spray. Okay, so you notice we've got 3 to 5 canes per linear foot, so we're going to thin them. You know, we're going to thin them out. You can see the light gray ones are the ones we've thinned out. The row width is 1.5 to 2 feet. All right, so if it grows out here, you know, beyond that, you know, I just run them over with a lawnmower. You know, and the wire is 4 feet off the ground and 3 feet apart, you know, somewhere around there. That's not as important, but just so you know that a wire there is good. Okay, and here's another example of how we can do it. So they've got this cross member here on the right, and when the berries, the plants grow up, they're in between these two wires, and so that's very good, and that keeps you from having a bunch of disease problems. And you know you can really keep the fruit clean. So how do we prune black or purple raspberries? Well, what we do with them is we top them in midsummer. All right, and you know whenever you prune anything, you stimulate growth. The other buds that are left, it stimulates growth. So that'll cause laterals to grow. All right, and then what we do is that when the winter is basically over, you know, you would have done it in April, is we prune these laterals to 10 to 12 inches, something like that, and that makes the fruit bigger, but also it keeps it, again, we don't want that fruit near the ground, so it keeps the fruit off the ground, and then you have a lot less disease problem. Blackberries, it's basically the same thing. We're going to top them, that Arapaho, that Apache, that Navajo. We're going to top them in the summertime, okay? And say 36 inches, and then the laterals will form. And then again, when the winter's basically over in April, we'll come back and we'll cut those laterals back, and you'll get bigger fruit, and they'll be off the ground again. Okay, so it's very easy from a pruning standpoint. Now this is a problem we run into sometimes with brambles. All right, this is aphid damage, and it's not so much that they're just curling the leaves up, but aphids are vectors for virus. Okay, and once a plant gets a virus, there's no spray for it. You just have to rip it out, and that, there's no vaccine, which was what we're all waiting for, right? But so you just have to take these things out, and you realize that in Hamilton, Hamilton is known for blueberries, but around the turn of the century, Hamilton was not known for blueberries. Hamilton was known for raspberries, and they were shipping raspberries to Baltimore, New York, Philadelphia. But then viruses came in and pretty well wiped out raspberries, and that's when blueberries started picking back up. Okay, so here's the little guys right here, and as I say, they carry disease and virus. So what do you do about them? Well, if you have a plant that has this virus, you have to eliminate it. You should always use certified virus-free plants. Your nursery catalog should say that, right? You should monitor for the aphids. In other words, you should be in the field when you're picking and turn the new leaves over. It's usually near the top, the new leaves over, and make sure that you don't have any aphids, right? And then to answer a question that comes up all the time, people say, well, when's the best time to transplant raspberries? In other words, they've got a neighbor who has raspberries, and the neighbor said, would you like some of my plants? And do you know the variety? No. Do you know if it has a virus? No. So what you're going to do, instead of spending $4 for a plant, is bring this Typhoid Mary plant over into your yard. I don't think so. Okay. So the best time to transplant raspberries is never. All right. And then the last thing is some varieties are actually aphid resistant. That royalty is actually aphid resistant. So I don't know if you seem to have a heck of a aphid problem, then that'd be a good one. But what do we spray for it? Well, if you go to Home Depot, Lowe's, etc., they have what they call insecticidal soaps. It's just a soap, and you spray it, and the soap covers the aphid. And I guess aphids don't like being clean or something, but they get suffocated by the soap. And so that's a real good way to just control it. This is another insect that we might run into, raspberry borer. And you won't see this guy, but you may see that the tops of the plants will wilt. So what happens is the female girdles the cane. And if you notice, there's two girdles here. They can girdle, and there's another girdle, right? And then she oviposits her eggs in between these girdles. And then when the eggs develop, they go down the cane, okay? And then can just wipe out your planting. So you don't see this a whole lot, but when you do, well, how do you control it? Well, you control it by cutting off the cane below this low girdle. All right. See, and this is what we've done here. And then what I always do is you take a mason jar, and you take all these ones that you've cut off, and you put them in the mason jar with a little water, and then you go over to that neighbor again, and hello, and then you give them your raspberry cuttings, and that takes care of that. Okay, and so you should cut off and destroy the wilted tips a few inches below that low girdle. And now here it says pre-bloom sprays may help, but it never gets that bad. And as long as you cut them off, you're fine. So I wouldn't even think you'd need any sprays at all. So here are some other problems. Botrytis is in the upper top. We're going to talk a lot about botrytis. The botrytis fungus is ubiquitous. You can see these berries that are being infected. Of course, you wouldn't want to eat one of these botrytis berries. It's not going to hurt you, but it would feel like you put a small mouse in your mouth. So it's not going to be good. But so this brings up the idea that you do have to pick these berries on a regular basis, because when they get overripe, this fungus can come in. Okay. On the right side, that's Phytophthora root rot. So again, you can't put these things in a low spot. You can see in this picture that if you went further up, in the picture, there was a higher spot there. So they put this thing in the lower end of the field. Not a good idea. Below that, you see yellows. Yellows is a virus. The leaf gets all mottled colored. Okay, and so you can't. When you get that, you just have to dig them out, because there's nothing you can do. And the lower left, you see heat injury. When raspberries are growing and it's 96 degrees out, the colors, the anthocyanins, will break down. This won't hurt you, and it won't taste any different, but you might wonder why it's doing that, and that's because of heat injury. Here's another problem on the left, rosette. Rosette, again, is another virus, and rosette, actually, you can see the leaves are deformed, the cane is deformed, the flowers are deformed, and this is one of the big ones that they had in Hamilton. So, this ran into all kinds of problems, and again, there's no way to control this, except to cut it out. On the right is blackberries with rust, and now the Indian name ones that we got out of Arkansas are rust resistant. So you shouldn't see this, all right? You shouldn't really see this problem. So I want to get into strawberries, but one thing I want to bring up with raspberries and strawberries is you cannot take these plants and follow any solanaceous crop. In other words, if you had tomatoes there, you had peppers there, you had eggplant there, the year before, whatever, you can't then put strawberries in or put raspberries, because they have a root rot. Tomatoes, the verticillium rot and wilt, and it stays in the soil for years and years and years. So you got to find a spot that hasn't had the tomatoes. All right. And one thing I've run into is that you have these community gardens, and people go, "Oh, I'd like to plant some strawberries there." The problem is that what's the first thing everybody plants in a community garden? Tomatoes, right? So if you want to put strawberries in, you probably got to have to put them in a pot with your own soil. So that's something just to remember. But so we're going to talk strawberries. Actually, this is one called Cardinal. Cardinal was one we developed in Arkansas. It was incredible flavor, but doesn't really do well in New Jersey. But you notice the seeds on the outside of the fruit, right? And those seeds are called achenes, A-C-H-E-N-E, achenes. And what that seed does as the fruit is growing is produce a hormone that actually makes the berry grow. Okay. And, I was a graduate assistant out in Arkansas, and we had all these strawberry plantings. And when I found out about these achenes and what they do, what I would do is I'd go out in the field and take a tweezer with me. And if you take, as the fruit is growing, if you take all the achenes off the left side of the fruit and all the ones off the right side, you will end up getting this long, skinny strawberry. Or if you take all the ones off the top and off the bottom, you get a flat one. And and the other thing is when you're a graduate assistant, they always want you to they want you to look busy all the time, but often there's like nothing to do. And so I can tell you that if you're out in the field on your hands and knees, with a tweezer, and you know the professors ride by in the truck, and they see you out there. They go, you know, boy, that Gary, he really looks busy, you know, and so it really pays off. And then I got really good at it, and so I would take the Keens so that I could make the strawberry into a G for Gary, and so I got pretty good at this. And as I said, I looked really busy. So you know we've had a breeding program at Rutgers for 50 years, and have come out with a lot of different varieties. And the head of that for years and years and years, his name was Gojko Jelenkovic. We just called him Dr. J. And so I would go and evaluate the strawberries in the field with him, and he had a rating system, 1 through 5, 5 being the best, and I would be with him, and sometimes you know his rating was not exactly my rating. So these are actually his sheets, copies of his sheets, and so here you have early season variety, Early Glow and Honey Oi, 2 early varieties, and below that are actually selections that I'm not sure if they were ever picked or not. This bottom one looks real good, but so the first row YD is yield, so you can see you know the yield. The last row is FF, is fruit firmness. Next to that is fruit size, and this FL, that's important. That's the one that we have in New Jersey, but they don't have in California. That one is called flavor. So that's very important. That's the one that you'd never see in California. So here's Honey Oi. Okay, here's Honey Oi. You see, they're not big. This is a quart container, but I mean, again, flavor that's wonderful. Early mid-season, we had one released called Raritan. Of course, Rutgers is on the banks of the old Raritan, so we had one Raritan. The one I really liked was Lester. And now here we got Sure Crop. Flavor, he gave a 2 to 3. I really like Sure Crop. I mean, I would have given at least a 4, but you know, he was the boss, so what can I tell you? But these are early mid-season varieties. I would go with the Lester. Here's Lester here, okay? A really nice berry. And again, you cut that open, it's solid, it's red, okay? It has something called flavor inside, okay? Here's Raritan. Raritan is very soft, all right? You put it in your mouth, push your tongue up, and just explodes with flavor. It's fantastic, okay? But because it's soft, if you ever try to ship this, you know, you put it in the truck, and by the time it got to where it was going, it'd be soup, all right? But from a homeowner standpoint, who cares? You know, I mean, you want flavor, so they are very nice. Looks like something we should be eating at Valentine's Day. Mid-season, you have All-Star, Red Chief, Jewel, Kent, right? Kent is one of my favorites. Again, I would have given this sometimes a 5 flavor. And Red Chief, and these are still standards. They really are standards. So here's All-Star. Okay, these shots, you know, when you release a variety and you send the information to the American Society of Horticultural Science, this is a picture for that magazine. Oh, so this is the new one. This is a new one out of Rutgers called Rutgers Scarlet. Now I've just planted this a couple of weeks ago in my place. Large size. Here it is, best in zones 5 to 8. So 5 to 8 is all of New Jersey, all right, which is interesting. It's a firm berry, flavor's excellent, freezing quality good. Red steel resistant means it's a root rot resistant. So this is our new big berry that we've recently released. Here's one called Archer. Archer just came out of Cornell. So I wrote here what the breeder said. Intense flavor, intense aroma, very sweet, 50 grams, so it's a big berry, high yielding, root rot tolerant. So I actually called up the breeder and I said, come on now, intense flavor, intense aroma. And he said, no, honest. He goes, it's really that way. So now I haven't grown any of these yet. I'd like to try this, but I wouldn't say it's a real pretty berry. I don't know, but it's intense flavor, intense aroma, so that's a good thing, right? Late season, Late Glow and Jersey Belle are the standards, to this day. So, again, as I mentioned before, it's good to have some early, some mid-season, some late. All right. And the other thing is we have day neutrals. Day neutral means that it flowers and fruits throughout the season. And the old standard was Tribute and TriStar, but now there are a bunch of new ones. And that kind of fills in gaps between the varieties that you have, And the Seascape is sort of the standard. But I noticed I was a couple of weeks ago at Home Depot, and they were selling hanging baskets of Cabrillo. So actually, by this weekend, I think I'm going to pick my first Cabrillos. I'll find out how they are then. But the neat thing is, from a hanging basket standpoint, that thing is going to flower and fruit the whole season. So I'm pretty excited about that. So here's some pictures of them. Here's Cabrillo up here, upper left, pretty berry, Portola on the upper right. Seascape, which is pretty the standard. I think this will probably be the easiest to get, even though, like I said, Home Depot's got the other one. And then Albion is getting really big all over the country. So here you have some of the really nice day neutrals. So it's pretty cool. I would think that the yield of these is not going to be fantastic, but like I said, I think it's kind of cool that you can put them in hanging baskets, and it's as you walk by, you're going to be able to pick a berry every few days. That's kind of nice, So what do we use? Well, we use how do we plant them? We usually plant it in a matted row, 4 to 5 feet between rows, and 2 feet between the plants. Okay, that's and I'll show you a picture of this in a second. And what we often do is we use hay and in the planting, and what that does is keeps the berry again off the ground, so less botrytis problems. All right. So here you've got a matted row early in the spring, and in the fall we've covered the whole thing with hay, right? And then in the late spring, we move some of it away from where the plants are, and then as a result, you leave some, and the plants then grow up through the hay, and as a result, the berries will sit on the hay, and that's a really, really good way to have it. Okay. Often, also, down in Cape May, Atlantic County, a great thing we can get is salt hay. All right, and the neat thing about salt hay is it doesn't have weed seeds in it. All right. So, if you've ever gotten hay from, the guy down the street and put it in your garden thinking you're doing a good thing, and then you'll have weeds you've never seen before, So, salt hay is great that way. And we can do that down South Jersey. It's great. When you're in Bergen County, you're not going to get salt hay, So these are the strawberry plants. This is a bundle of 25 plants, okay? And what we usually do is we put them in a bucket of water for a half an hour, so that they're totally hydrated. But you notice that all they are is a bunch of roots, right? A bunch of roots, and then there's a growing tip there, and that's all the plant is at this stage. And when you get them, you will get directions from the nursery, and because they want to be very specific with you about the orientation, and that is that if you plant them too high up and the roots are out of the ground, then the plant is going to dry up and die. If you plant them too low, then that growing tip is below the ground and it's going to die too. So it's very important, this orientation. You know, it's like, it reminds me of a friend of mine. He was recently building a house, and he went into the house with a contractor, and they walked into the first room, and he said, listen, I'd really like this to be a nice gold color. And the contractor said, fine. And then the contractor went over to the window, opened the window, and yelled outside, green side up. And then they went to the next room, and he said, this is my daughter's room. I'd like this to be blue. He says, okay. And the guy walked over to the window, opened it up, and he said, green side up. And so he kept doing this, you know, open the window, green side up. And my buddy finally asked the contractor, why do you keep on yelling green side up, you know? And he said, well, you know, I've got a bunch of master gardeners outside, and they're laying sod. Old joke. But orientation is very important. So the other thing is that strawberries can have frost problems. And, you know, we've had a bunch of frost episodes this year. And you notice the one flower in the dead center has a black middle, all right? That's not going to set, okay? And the one on the right is yellow, all right? That'll set. So frost is very important and can be a really big problem. So what we do, growers do, is they have irrigation. And if it's going to go, if they're in bloom and it's going to go below 32, they'll turn on the irrigation sprinklers. And when that water lays on the flower and it gets below 32, the water, which is a liquid phase, turns to ice. And when you change a liquid phase to a solid phase, there's an explosion of heat. It's called the heat of fusion. So there are little actually explosions of heat when that happens. And that heat will actually keep the flower from being damaged. And it worked down to about 28 degrees or something. Below that, you're kind of, you know, SOL. But it does work. And actually, my job in Arkansas was to turn on the sprinklers. And I had to monitor the temperature. I had a temperature thermometer out on the lawn, you know, and it was supposed to get down. I kept on going out there. You know, often 1 o'clock in the morning, it's getting low. I have to drive out to the farm and turn the water on. You already had the pipes out there. And the bad thing that would happen is these pipes were 20 feet long, aluminum pipes, and they would fit into each other. And if you put the water on too fast, they would pop apart. And now it's, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning, 30 degrees out in the mud. And somehow you've got to get a 20-foot aluminum pipe back together. Not my favorite job, I could tell you. So here you got, you know, the strawberry, and it's black because of frost. What can a homeowner do? Homeowner could use sprinklers, but homeowner could just cover them with a cloth. Homeowner could put bushel baskets over the top or something like that. But, you know, you've got to protect them somehow. So this is the strawberry. This is our favorite friend, botrytis again. Again, you wouldn't want to eat this thing. Wouldn't hurt you, but you're not going to eat this thing. So salt hay is going to help you with this. So here's some of the problems. In the upper left, here's boron deficiency. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you could still eat this thing, but you know, you would hope your strawberries don't look like that, right? Below that, you see botrytis, and you see the flower, but you see some leaf laying near the flower, and you could see the spores of the botrytis, right? So if you have a wet spring, this is the timing when you would go in with a spray. And what do you spray? Well, you can spray something like Captan, okay? Captan you can get in at Captan, right? You can get that at Home Depot. And you can put Captan in your coffee. It's not going to hurt you, right? But not going to make the coffee taste any better. But and it has a pHI of 2 days. So in other words, when you spray it, it'll take care of these spores. But by the time you pick the fruit, it's long gone. All right. So you know, notice on the upper right, there's the botrytis strawberries, which you just don't want, right? So here on the upper right, it's too late to spray it. But down on the lower left, that's when you need to spray it. All right. And then in the lower right, you have verticillium wilt. There, there were tomatoes before they planted the strawberries. And so that's what happened. The plant just sort of collapses because the root system just gives up, okay? Now, one way to get around this whole botrytis thing is plant the strawberries with plastic, right? And a lot of growers do this. They make the whole row of plastic, punch a hole in it, and put the strawberry plant in there. Problem with that is that, you know, you don't get a matted row. So instead of 2 feet apart, you have basically within each row 2 rows of 2 feet apart. And that way you actually get enough plants in there, okay? But that will greatly decrease your botrytis problems, that's for sure. So there's another cultural method to kind of decrease the need for fungicides at all. This is another problem we have with strawberries. It's called bacterial leaf spot. People will get this or bring it in to master gardeners. There's really nothing you need to do for it. You know, it never gets that bad. And you'll notice what happens is the bacteria actually attacks the leaf, and then the plant actually walls off the bacteria infection. And then that intersection just drops out. That's why you've got a hole in the middle, okay? It's called suberization. But they wall it off. It's a natural thing that the strawberries do. So don't worry about it. Now, some people think, you know, well, we ought to be spraying for this. We have the power to spray. So why don't we spray? But, you know, just because you have the power doesn't mean you have to do it, which is illustrated in this shot here. You know, just because Moses has the power, he doesn't need to use it, you know, all the time. So this is a shot of a nursery and a catalog, and you know, nursery catalogs love to say it's new, it's great, it's different. You know, this is a peach in the middle of this thing, right? Must be a really small peach, but peach in the middle of this thing, an incredible new variety. So it just goes to the point where you really need to just stick to the varieties that we know work, okay? And that's why on your $50,000 sheet, I've listed varieties, all right? So this is another shot of the matted row. You can see the matted row here, all right? And now the reason why you notice in the picking basket, you could see berries that are not ripe, because there are sometimes we used to have to do yield studies, and we just pick a day and we just pick everything, and that would give us an idea of total yield. And so that's why you know, a lot of the strawberries look like California. But just wanted you to see what the matted row looks like. This is again another shot of the matted row, our selections. And this is actually was a young lady, Peggy Smith, that I was dating in Arkansas, and she would ask me, Gary, are you picking strawberries? Can I come out and graze? Okay, I didn't know exactly what she meant. But you know, in the outer row, we always have a guard row. The guard row is just a bunch of extra plants so that, you know, if a pickup truck's going by, they don't run over our research berries. And so she said she needed to graze. And so she came out, and she had a cooler with her, and she was picking the berries, and inside the cooler were 2 canisters of Ready Whip. And she picked the berry, hit it with the Ready Whip, and pop it in. And it was amazing. She could eat the whole row. You know, she ate a lot of strawberries. And I know one time our department head, George Bradley, came out, and really nice guy from Arkansas. And he said, Gary, what's that young lady doing? And I said, well, she's grazing out there, George. Okay. So he went out there, and, you know, she picked one and hit it with Ready Whip for him. And I guess he liked it, because like 3 days later, he said, showed up, and he said, Gary, I'm going to be grazing. So he had a can of Ready Whip. And there you go. So I'm telling you, if you've ever been in a strawberry patch, picking and eating, I don't know of anything better than that. I mean, it is really fantastic. You know, they literally have to pull me out of that situation because I'll just stay there, you know, all day. Um, and just like raspberries, you need a pH of around 6 to 6.5, which you also see on your $50,000 sheet. So, you know, if your pH is too low, then you need lime. If it's too high, you use sulfur to take it down. Okay. So very important. All right. So we're going to take about a 10-minute break. All right. And then we're going to get into grapes. All right. So it's for my watch says 11:30. So we're going to come back at 11:40. All right. So break.
Okay, it's been about 10 minutes. So I hope everybody's back with us. I know a few people had to go. Quickly go over the answers to some of the questions you guys sent in. If I can pull up that screen, which is now not letting me. Okay, so the question from Joyce about the little black bugs on your strawberries, those are thrips. I can email you some information. And then I had a couple questions from Millie. What is better, groundwater or rainwater? There are pros and cons to both. You know, the pH is a big thing. You know the pH of your groundwater. If rain is acidic, rainwater, you know, that can mess up the pH in your soil. You know, so that's one of those difficult questions. And let's see. Can different varieties, small fruits, be planted by each other? Yes, you can. You can interplant strawberries with, you know, under the canopy of your, say, a mid-season blackberry, things like that. Can mushroom soil pH be adjusted? I did answer that in the chat. So when you're using amendments, you know, compost, mushroom soil, you know, if you add them in the fall and it gives it a chance and you know, you dig it in well, you can want to get your soil pH tested so we know the overall pH of the soil, of the ground that you're looking to plant in, and also, you know, what you're looking to plant, and then we can give you recommendations if you need to adjust the pH up or down. Okay, and then Kim has a question about figs. A fig that looks great makes figs, but they never mature. Are there any suggestions? Gary, what do you know about figs?
Well, one reason is that they don't mature is that you may have a female plant, and so the berry sets, but because it hasn't been pollinated by the male plant, the berry will just never mature and often just falls off. So there are varieties of figs where they're where the male and female flower is together. So you may just have a variety that is not. So you may have to go out and get yourself a male fig plant. Not much else you can do about that.
Okay. All right. So now I'm going to hand it back over to Gary, and we're going to get into our last topic, which is growing grapes.
Well, we got grapes and blueberries.
Oh, and blueberries. How could I forget blueberries?
Right. Well, the other comment I'll make about mushroom soil is we have found that, you know, to take pH down, if you were just trying to use just mushroom soil, to take pH down, we use sulfur. But it winds up the microorganisms that would help you take the pH down don't kick in until around 6.5. So as a result, it's very hard. You could add all the sulfur you want, but nothing's really going to happen. So it's very hard to lower the pH of mushroom soil. So as Jen said, you're really going to have to mix it in with your soil and hopefully end up with pH close to where you need it. All right. So, all right. So we're going to talk grapes. You know, this is really my passion. You know, when I came on in New Jersey in 1984, there were 7 wineries in New Jersey, in the whole state. And that was because, you know, we had this stupid thing in New Jersey, or the whole country, called Prohibition. And one of the leftover laws of that was that we could only have one winery per million people in New Jersey. So we had 7 wineries. Well, in the early 80s, the then Secretary of Agriculture, Art Brown, pushed through a Farm Winery Act. And that basically said that if you use Jersey fruit, you could have a winery. And so as a result, I've been helping people start wineries ever since. So now I think there are 64 wineries. Most of them have started in my office. So that's a lot of what I do. People come in, what varieties should they grow, how much is it going to cost, how do you train them, how do you prune them, blah, blah, blah. So that's a lot of what I do. And as I said, I lead trips to Tuscany, and it's we don't go to museums, we don't go to churches, we go to wineries, and so we basically eat and drink the whole time. So if you've never been to Tuscany to taste the wine, it's an amazing experience. So so we're going to talk grapes, and there are basically 3 kinds. And the genus and species of the genus is Vitis. The top one there is Vitis labrusca. These are growing in the woods. You know, when you go out in the woods, maybe when you were a kid, you'd find a grape, and when you take the grape and you squeeze it, it just slides out. And they call them slip skin, labrusca. But you also know them as Concord, if you have it, Concord jelly, right? So typical, I mean, Concord, Delaware, Ives, Niagara, all those are Vitis labrusca. They put out a lot of grapes. They don't get a whole lot of insects. They don't get a whole lot of diseases. A lot of yield. They can take cold temperatures. But the problem with Vitis labrusca is they produce Vitis labrusca wine, basically Concord wine or Manischewitz. And that's not considered gourmet wine. And my Jewish friends don't even drink Manischewitz anymore. And then there's Vitis vinifera. People just call them vinifera. Vinifera, you know them as Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, Merlot, Riesling, etc., the European grapes. They get more in the way of insect and disease problems. They can't take cold temperatures, and the yields are lower. But of course, they also make fabulous wine. And then there are hybrids between them, right? So they were crossed, and they got some of the good things from the vinifera and some of the good things from labrusca. They could take the cooler temperatures. So so you have to understand that there are basically 3 kinds of grapes. We do soil tests to do grapes, to plant them. Again, I got to know the pH. Again, it's 6 to 6.5. I'd like to know the soil type, to know how much it's going to hold nutrients. Organic matter, because organic matter actually releases nutrients, and grapes don't need a whole lot of fertility. You really don't want a real fertile soil. So again, we'd like to know what the fertility is, but you don't need much. The depth of the water table, as I said, Cape May is one of the best places in the East to grow grapes. But as you know, there are a lot of places in Cape May that has a water table that's not far down. Okay, you have all these marshes and everything else, right? So grapes need at least 6 feet of soil depth that without any water intrusion. So that's something that you know, is not everywhere in Cape May or any place else. And this picture here, I was with a woman that used to work for the soil conservation, and she and I would go out and evaluate places that people were going to plant grapes. And her name was Mary Beth Sorrentino, and we had an auger that we would go down. You could go down 6 feet. And I know one time we were over in Salem County, and the guy had just bought the piece of land, and Mary Beth tended to say things as they were. And here he was standing there, and we were down about 15 inches, and the hole just filled totally in with water. And Mary Beth said, well, Gary, this is like the worst sight we've ever seen. You know, the poor guy was like crushed. But you need at least 6 feet. And then what we often do if we're going to put a vineyard in is check for nematodes. Nematodes are little worms that eat the roots. And when the vineyard is going in, I always tell them I like nematodes. And the reason is because often someone wants to plant a vineyard and they haven't really thought this out. But boy, they want to produce that wine, So, I asked them, they tell me that they've already ordered the grapes and they're planting, in next week. And I asked them, well, what's the pH of the soil? I don't know. What's the soil type? I don't know. Depth of water table? I don't know. Fertility? I don't know. I said, well, did you check the nematodes? Well, what are nematodes? Well, nematodes are going to eat all your roots, and the grape plants are $4.50 a piece, and you plant 850 plants per acre. And so if they eat all your roots, it's going to cost you a fortune. So we need a nematode test. So if we do the test and we have them, we can control them. And now in the old days, what they would do is fumigate the soil. They would use something called like methyl bromide, and which is a gas. You had this rig on the back of the tractor and these spikes that go into the soil, and the gas would go into the soil, and the gas killed everything. It killed the bad things, the good things, weeds, seeds, worms, everything, right? Which is not a good thing. And then the other thing is that those tubes that where the gas was going through, if one of those tubes broke and you got a whiff of it, it also killed you. Okay. So Rutgers came up with something they call biorenovation. And what we do is we plant something like rape, and you plant that, it comes up, you disc it under, and when it breaks down, it gives off a gas and kills the nematodes. And during this time, because they lose a year, right? But the nice thing is then that they could maybe read something and find out what the pH is and the soil type and the fertility and the depth of the water table and stuff like that. So as a result, I always say nematodes are my friends. So this is how grapes are grown now. If you see grapes in somebody's backyard, they're usually growing all over the place, But it winds up that you have to get sun on the grapes to develop the flavors. And so as a result, we always plant grapes in a north-south row, okay? North-south orientation. We don't want an east-west because you understand if the sun comes up in the east, the first plant's going to shade the second plant plant's going to shade the third plant, et cetera, until 1201, and then it's going to go the opposite direction. So we always plant these in a north-south direction, all right? And much better when we get the grapes ripe, all right? This was a shot from Atlantic County, and this was June of 1988. But that same year, early, it was Super Bowl Sunday, it got to -15. And the row over here on the left is Riesling, and that -15 killed these plants down to the ground. You could see there's just some leaves coming up from the root system. The row on the right is also a vinifera, but it's one called Ricacatelli, and Ricacatelli in June looked great. So even within these groups of Labrusca or vinifera or hybrid, there are differences in hardiness. So people always wonder how to train them, how to prune them. I get all those questions all the time. And it winds up all over the world. There are different ways to do it. Some are based on their climate. Some are based on tradition. If you go in the middle row here, all the way to the right, you see pergola. I mean, the pergola, you can walk under this. This was basically something in North Italy. The one below it, that basket, the Kuluva, that is on the Canary Islands, and that's because they dig a hole and they put rocks all around the side of the hole, and the plants are actually wound in a circle in that hole because the wind there is so strong that you can't put a trellis up because it would blow down all the time. So they've been growing grapes like that for 2,000 years there, okay? But we use a system, two different systems. This system, this low head bilateral cordon system, we actually call VSP. Great people love to use terminology so that nobody else knows what the heck they're talking about. Okay. So VSP is vertical shoot positioning. So we use this with the hybrids and we use this with vinifera. Why? Because the canes of those two grow up. All right. So when we plant the plant in the ground, it grows up and we have a wire here at about 36 inches. And when it gets to the wire, we cut it off. All right. And then, like with the blackberries, you get laterals, right? So we pick two of those laterals and we train it to the wire. And we are going to keep this this trained to the wire for the next 25, 30 years. All right. And then you see that the canes will grow straight up and we have two catch wires and the canes grow in between the catch wires. All right. And then when we prune them, in April 1st, somewhere like that, we prune it back to one or two buds every year to these spurs. All right. So literally I could take all of you into a vineyard, show you this, and you're all expert pruners in, 10 minutes. So the problem a lot of people do is they don't realize that the fruit on grapes sets on this year's wood. So if you go out in a vineyard in the middle of the winter, there's not much left. You've pruned. You're going to have to prune away 90% of that to get a crop. Okay, that's why when people have grapes in the backyard, they don't prune enough, and somebody's got a grape plant in their yard, they haven't pruned it, and the neighbor is getting the fruit, all the way over in the next yard. So you have to prune these back, and it's not a big deal. All right. On the other hand, American types, Vitis labrusca, the canes grow down. So what you do is you bring the canes up, the trunk up there to a wire that's at 5 feet, cut it off. And now in this system, they brought 2 up. All right. And you train it. And now you're going to keep this for the next 25 years. And you have the canes coming down. And how do you prune it? Again, prune it back to 1 or 2 buds. All right. And so this is how you would do Concord and Delaware and Fredonia and Ives and all those. Okay. And so pruning is very easy. Okay. So there's really no big deal to pruning. Now this is a shot of a vinifera up at a winery in Warren County, Unionville, one of the best in the state. And they've brought 2 canes up here instead of the 1, and to a wire, it's 36 inches. Okay, and here you got the canes going straight up. All right. Now these 2 guys, the one on the right, his name is Darrell Hessington. Now for years and years and years, Darrell was the winemaker at Cape May Winery. He just left recently to go to a winery in northern New Jersey because I think his wife got a job up there. But Darren has been around for a long time, made some fantastic wines down there in Cape May. And this is John Altmeyer on the left. And both these guys were working for Unionville, but John is the winemaker up at Alba Vineyards up there in Northwest Jersey. Again, easily one of the best wineries in the state. So this is just to show you what this VSP looks like. So what about diseases? Okay. This is downy mildew. Okay. And so grapes have a whole host of diseases, fungal diseases. All right. And so the one on the upper left is powdery mildew, and these are the big 4. Upper right, downy mildew. Here's our friend botrytis again. If somebody comes in August into my office and says, with this cluster, and says, Gary, what should I do? I tell them it's over, go to the beach. So it's way too late. And then the lower right is black rot. And black rot is the main reason why we cannot grow grapes in New Jersey organically. They can't do it in Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland, New York, because this thing will actually turn all the grapes into dried out mummies by June. All right. And so, yes, if you're going to grow grapes, you're going to have to use some fungicides. All right. Here's some other problems: blue mold on the upper left, ripe rot on the upper right. Both these are not that bad a problem. Blue mold you usually get if you have yellow jack problems, and they get to the grapes when they're about ripe, going for the sugar, and then the fungus comes in. Lower left is crown gall. That's a gall that grabs hold of the trunk and stops all movement up and down in the plant. That's usually because you've stuck a variety in a too cold spot. In other words, if you stick Chardonnay in Sussex County, it's going to get crown gall. All right. And the lower right is an interesting. This is the underside of a concord leaf, and there's an insect called phylloxera, a root louse. All right, and we have this root louse in New Jersey. It's all over the country, and they attack the roots of grapes. Now, American grapes couldn't care less; they're immune to it. All right, but they have an aerial form when they mate, and if you go ahead and cut one of these bumps open, you'll see a larvae in there. All right. So you'll see this, and people will go, well, what should I spray? You don't need to spray for it. I mean, to a concord, this is basically like acne. No big deal. All right, unless you're in high school and you had a whole lot of acne. But like I did early on. Well, that's a whole other story. And but the neat thing about this is that vinifera are very susceptible. Okay. And very susceptible. So somebody in the 1850s brought American plants over to Europe. I just reviewed a book about this. And they didn't realize that the roots were full of these bugs. And when these bugs got a hold of the vineyards in Europe, they went crazy. I mean, they started killing all the vineyards in southern France, and then they went to the Rhone Valley and killed all the plants there. They went to Burgundy and killed, and then the government there got actually multiple scientists to help and to figure out what this was, and they realized it was this bug. But Louis Pasteur actually got involved, and he realized that if you flood the vineyard for like 3 days, it'll kill it. But this is 1850, for God's sake, and a lot of vineyards on the sides of hills, and so how are you gonna do that? So there was actually a nurseryman in Texas, T.V. Munson, and he realized that if American grapes are immune to it and they only attack the roots, why can't we take European Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot and graft it on top of American roots? And that would fix the problem. Well, as a result, everywhere you go in the world, vineyards are on American roots, no matter where you go. Okay. There's a couple spots in Chile and a couple different places where there's no phylloxera, but everywhere you go, all right? So, if you're in France and you're in a vineyard with the viticulturist there, and he starts saying, wine is wonderful because it's because of our terroir, you could say, yeah, but you're on American roots. Drives them crazy. But very important. And we'll talk about what you need to do because of that. So here is my vineyard at the Cream Ridge Rutgers Station in Central Jersey, and the one year I totally threw everything I had and was given to grow grapes organically, and that's the left-hand side, and the right-hand side is the typical recommended applications. My brother, who's a master gardener, he says, Gary, you need to take a picture of this because this really shows you I had no leaves and no fruit. And so when anybody comes into my office and goes, well, yeah, I'm going to grow grapes organically in New Jersey, I show them this picture. I said, no, you're not. No, you're not. So forget that. Okay. So you have to put these things on a rootstock, the vinifera on a rootstock. So when you call up a nursery, you don't say, I want 50 Cabernet Sauvignon plants. You say, I want 50 Cabernet Sauvignon on 3309, or on 10114 or on Riparia. Okay, those are the 3 rootstocks that we have found in New Jersey work. So all the grapes in New Jersey are on either 3309, 10114, or Riparia. This SO4 was the one that when I first came on, people were using. But the problem is that it's very vigorous, and it's so vigorous that Christmas time it's still growing. So then the winter comes in and kills the plants. All right, and so you just can't do that. You just can't do that. So so as a result, that's not recommended whatsoever. Okay. This you will see sometimes. These are these flies that attack the grapes. Again, I don't spray for them. It's never that bad a problem. So I don't really worry about it, but I just wanted you to see what it looks like. These gall makers on this leaf. Okay. This is the bloom of grapes. This is about now. Okay, grapes are blooming right now, and it's not some spectacular bloom. But this is to remind me to say that we know the fungal diseases that attack grapes. We know how to control them, and it's all based on the phenology. In other words, what stage the grapes are at to attack them. So the spray schedule is all set up that way. So you can download the grape spray schedule from the Rutgers website. All right, and all that is www.njaes.rutgers.edu/pubs. And if you just put in grapes, all that stuff is going to come up. www.njaes.rutgers.edu/pubs. So this is a nitrogen deficiency of grapes. You notice the veins are green, but the interveinal is yellow. So what nutrient is this? Oh, I heard somebody say magnesium. Yes. Okay, magnesium deficiency. Back in the 80s, I was married, and my wife was a French teacher, and we went all over France for about a month back in the 80s, and she wanted to go see the castles in Loire Valley. And so we went to the castles, and while she was looking at the castles, I was taking nutrient deficiency slides of grapes, which is maybe the reason why the whole thing didn't work out so good, But this is what magnesium deficiency looks like. This is netting on grapes. You may need netting because of birds. And Cape May, I have to tell you, is, as you probably know, is in a flyway. For the migrating birds, right? And so almost all the vineyards in Cape May net. Now, this is an over-the-row netting. This is kind of how they used to do it a while back. Now, they have what they call fruit zone netting. It's only like a 2-foot wide roll, and you just roll it out on the one side by that 36-inch wire, because that's where the fruit will be, and just attach it. And it's much easier than the old days. But you may need netting to grow grapes. I put this on here to remind me that, people are going to ask you about making wine. And if you have questions about making wine, I have a really nice winemaking pamphlet from Ohio State that I can fax you or email you. And it's very good about making wine on a small basis, in 5-gallon carboys and stuff. And so it's very good that way. But the other thing I wanted to mention again is we do have a pamphlet on varieties for seedless grapes. And now these are hybrids, so they don't need as much spraying as the vinifera, but they're going to need some fungicide sprays. But incredible flavors, great flavors. So if you're of the mind, there's some nice grapes that you can really grow. That are really put on some really beautiful flavors. Okay, so I always put this after wine. If you eat well and get lots of sleep and do exercise and drink lots of water, someday you'll die anyway. So open the wine. I don't know about you, but during this pandemic, I've been doing my best to keep all the wineries of the world in business. Um, and from what I understand, a lot of other people are doing the same thing. So I could say wine helps. Wine helps. Um, the last thing we're going to do is blueberries. I leave blueberries because they were invented here, right? If you've never been to a blueberry farm in Hamilton, this is a typical harvest in Hamilton. They have big berries there, really big berries, and of course when you go into Hamilton, it'll all the signs say blueberry capital of the world. So that's definitely a big deal. We have 8,000 acres, and blueberries are very important. And as I said, blueberries were invented by a woman. Her name was Elizabeth White. Okay, and the family was a cranberry growers up in what they call White's Bog in Burlington County, and I was just up there 2 weekends ago. And what she would do is, I mean, she realized, we harvest cranberries, but to get blueberries, you got to go out there in the pine barrens with the snakes and the ticks and everything else. And so what she said was, well, she came up with these little wooden gauges with holes in them, and she told people that if you she'll pay you if you can bring back and show her where there's a blueberry plant where the berries will fit through this hole in the gauge. And you could see the different sizes. If it's one size, she'll give you $1, $1.50, $2, $3, depending on how big the berry is. And she promised that you had to take her to the plant. She's going to dig it up and then bring it back to her farm. So she was basically selecting from fruit size. And notice that she called them huckleberries back then. This is in 1914. Because she really didn't know her botany. People say, well, when I was a kid, I ate huckleberry. No, you didn't. Huckleberries have 10 large bony seeds in them. Okay. And if you eat them, you go crunch, crunch, crunch. Okay. So those are wild blueberries. And in fact, if Mark Twain knew his botany, there are no huckleberries that grow in Hannibal, Missouri along the Mississippi River. The book should have been called Blueberry Finn, but I digress. But anyway, she got together with a fellow from the USDA, Frederick Colville, and he came up and he taught her a little bit about botany. And then later publications, it got rid of this huckleberry thing and said blueberry. And then Frederick Colville and Elizabeth White started breeding, well, blueberries, and that was a lot of the early varieties, and they were named after the people, June and Fred and Allison and different things. I know the one you can still buy. It was found by this guy. His name was Rube Leek, Rube Leek. All right, and Elizabeth told him, "Listen, Rube, I can't name a blueberry Rube." Because, a rube is like somebody that's not real bright. It's kind of rube. And then a leek, a leek's a vegetable. So what she did was she took R-U-B-E and the L from leek, and she called it ruble. And so you can still buy the ruble. All right. So that, she was incredible. She really was. Here's how they propagate blueberries. You take these shots are from my major advisor at Rutgers was Paul Eck. And he wrote a lot of the early books on blueberries. And so when you're a grad student, and you're finishing up, what you do is you grab all his slides, make copies of them, and then give them back before he notices that you took them. And these are the propagating beds. So here's the propagating beds now. And what it is, it's 50% sand, 50% peat moss, and you take last year's wood sometime in January or February, and you cut it into like 4-inch pieces, and you stick them in here with at least one bud above, and then you leave them all year and they'll root. And then at the end of the year, you pot them up and you leave them in the pot for a year. And so when you buy blueberry plants, you're actually buying a 2-year rooted cutting. Okay. So here are the plants here. All right. And the one thing that you have to understand with blueberries is they do not have root hairs. So the blueberry plant root system is very inefficient for picking up nutrients and picking up water. And then, of course, on top of that, they're in a sandy soil, which most things just run right through. So you have inefficient roots, and soil doesn't hold much anyway. So that should tell you something about how often you water and how often you fertilize, right? This is the thing to remember with blueberries. The three most important factors for success is pH, pH, pH. Okay. The range of pH is low, 4.5 to 4.8, 4.5 to 5, just like rhododendrons, just like azaleas. Okay. That's why I have them in my landscape in front of the house, those three things, because, you can't have something growing that needs 4.5 here and then 2 feet away, something 6.5. It doesn't work. All right. So it's critical. Now, if the pH is lower than that or higher than that, think of it this way. I've invited all of you over to my house. We're going to have dinner. We're sitting at the dining room table. I put all the food on the table. I said, go ahead and eat. Yeah, but the other thing I also did was I put a piece of duct tape over your mouth. Okay. Well, that is a blueberry plant at 5.5 pH. That's a blueberry plant at 4.0 pH. Okay. So that pH has to be adjusted to the right. Now, in the pine barrens, it's all that way anyway. All right. But if you get it out of the pine barrens, you have to go, and it's sulfur to take pH down, lime to take pH up. So, every county agent has their favorite slide. This is my favorite slide. And what this is I was called to a blueberry farm in Maryland, 10 acres, 4-year-old plants. They were setting the fruit. The leaves hadn't come out. It bloomed, set fruit, and then all the fruit started drying up. Gary, you got to come down here. Oh, my God. So I went down there, and I looked at the plant, and I realized there was something not above ground, had to be below ground. So I did one of my favorite things that I like to do on a farm, and that is to pull the plant out of the ground. Because when you pull a plant out of the ground on a farm, farmers make really neat noises, this, so they make those noises when you pull plants out of the ground. So this blueberry plant, this is what I got. If you look all the way to the left, you notice the roots are sort of making right angles. All right. And the reason is that those roots are the ones that were in the pot. Right. And when those roots tried to get out into her soil, the blueberry plant said, no, I don't think so. I can't grow here. Right. And so they would just turn, and then they would try it again. Go, no, I don't think so. Right. So then a little to the right of that, there's no roots at all. All right. Because again, the blueberry plant is saying, I can't grow here. I mean, forget it. Right. And then a little to the right of that, you notice there's a little mass of roots. And she had mulched. And so there's like a 3-inch layer of broken down mulch. And there the blueberry plant says, okay, I'll grow. But the thing is, you got a 4-year-old plant trying to put on a full load of blueberries with 3 inches of roots. And it wasn't enough water, wasn't enough nutrients, so it just collapsed. So how did we fix this? Well, I told her, you got to get all your workers over here. We have to strip all the fruit off all the plants, the whole 10 acres. Because, see, the way plants work is the fruit is actually what you call a sink. And that means that all the water and all the nutrients you put into the plant goes to the fruit first, and then if there's anything left over, it goes to the plant. That's why with peaches, apples, grapes, blueberries, we take the flowers off for the first couple years. All right. And strawberries you can let go. Raspberries you can let go. But these things, you have to take the flowers off. All right. So we took all the fruit off. And of course, then we also hit it with sulfur because it winds up the pH was 6.2. Okay. So this shows you how specific the blueberry plant is. And, when I give lectures all over the country, all over the world, and one thing I tell them is, well, if you're going to grow blueberries, you have to recreate New Jersey. which of course scares the heck out of a lot of people. But that's what you have to do. I mean, they evolved here in the Pine Barrens. So if you're going to grow blueberries, you have to recreate New Jersey. What's the best thing to do? Get yourself some peat moss, a gallon of peat moss per plant. And peat moss is naturally low pH, right? And you just mix it with your soil, right? And you'll be fine. The blueberries need cross pollination. So again, I like to have an early variety, a mid-season, a late. I have to tell you that the varieties that you're used to growing, I see these blueberries coming in from Mexico and Peru. They look fine, no flavor, no flavor. There are varieties of blueberries that will knock your socks off, varieties-wise, and they happen to be on the $50,000 sheet, right? And I'll show you some of these, but incredible flavors. So I already mentioned that you need water, right? This is what they used to use, solid set irrigation. Most people now use trickle irrigation, all right, or a soaker hose homeowners can use, right? Growers used to fertilize when the plants were dormant. Didn't make any sense. Plants work like if you have a drink in front of you now and you have a straw, right? When you pull on that straw, right, then it comes from down below. So when the buds break, that's when the roots pull up. And so here the buds weren't breaking. You're fertilizing, and as a result, where did that fertilizer go? Well, the plants aren't picking up, so I don't know where it's going. It's going into the soil, it's going into your water table. God knows where it's going. So we did research and showed that, excuse me, the best thing to do is to wait till you've got bloom and then fertilize. And it wound up that they didn't use any more fertilizer and they got 100% increase in yields. Okay, not everybody, but a lot of people, at least 50% increase in yields. So, so that's when you fertilize, when you have bud break and bloom. Mulching is a good idea because the organic matter in the Pine Barrens is very, very high, 6, 7, 8, 9%. Blueberries like organic matter, so mulching is a good idea to build that organic matter up. This is a shot I took in 1988. It was a drought year, and in Burlington County, many of the guys did not have irrigation. So if you look on the left, the lower left there, you see it's clean under there with that no weeds. He came down here in the spring with a herbicide, but he ran out of the herbicide, and you could see where it ran out because now all the water is from the rain is being taken up by the weeds, not the blueberry plant. So again, it shows you how inefficient this system is. I actually tell blueberry growers that every weed under your blueberry plants costs you $1 because it costs you $1 for the water, the nutrients, the decreased yield. Every weed costs you $1, and it shows you that you've got to control the weeds under blueberries. So there's some varieties. This is Duke, early one. You notice when it was released, it was called mild flavor. That's what the breeders use when it has no flavor. Okay. The main attribute of this thing was it was early. All right. But there's just not much in the way of flavor in this thing. Here's a new one we just released. Raz has a raspberry flavor. All right. It's pretty cool. And medium to large fruit. Draper is one of the new ones. Nice flavored, pretty large size, pretty berry, really pretty berry. I have down here at the bottom dreaded Draper drop. Wound up that sometimes when the berries weren't ripe yet, they'd fall off the plant. But we found out that if the pH got too low, that's when that happens. If the pH is up around 5, you're fine. Here's Ivanhoe. Ivanhoe was introduced in 1951. Okay, that was a good year, happens to be my birth year. But Ivanhoe, incredible flavor. And this is a hard variety to find, but I understand Miller Nurseries, if you go online, Miller Nurseries in New York State has it. Incredible flavor, okay? Blue crop is the #1 variety worldwide. Very nice flavor, widely adapted to all kinds of different soils. Just gives you a crop every year. Nice flavor. It's not like the flavor, but it's very nice flavor. Legacy, very nice flavor. A little better than blue crop. Again, widely adapted. Okay. Now here's my favorite. It's called Elizabeth. Considered the best flavored blueberry. Large berries, and has a spreading habit. In other words, the plant tends to go like this. You realize blueberry farms can't have something that does this because they use mechanical harvesters, and you need erect plants for that. So this one became out of favor, but you can get this one. You know, on the back of the $50,000 sheet, there are nurseries. And for instance, the second one down in the nurseries is A.G. Ammon, and they have Elizabeth. All right. Once you taste this, one of the problems is once you taste this real good stuff, you become a fruit snob. You know, it's tough to eat that stuff that you get from the Acme and the ShopRite thing. You know, because this is like that stuff is a Volkswagen, and this thing is a Ferrari. So that's really what you're dealing with. We came out with one called Pink Lemonade. When they are ripe, they are red like this, pink, and incredible from a landscaping standpoint, attractive, very attractive, and sweet. And they call it a flowery flavor, very nice. Darrow, big berries will actually hide a quarter, all right, and very, very good flavor. I love the flavor of this. All right. And then this one's even bigger, and it's firm, really sweet. This is getting really big in Maryland and Delaware and Northern Virginia, but it will do great here, and it's really nice berries. Pruning is very easy. I always say that if you know how to count, you can prune blueberries. Why? Because you see in the middle there, it says cut 1 out of 6 of the oldest canes out. So in other words, if you have 6 canes, you take 1 out. If you have 12 canes, you take 2. If you have 18 canes, you take 3. All right. So the blueberry farms that are 50, 60, 70 years old, the root systems are that old, but everything above ground is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 years old. Okay. So because they know that the new canes are the ones that get less disease, the new canes are the ones that put on the most fruit. So, but I mentioned here, the first thing you should do is determine plant status. That means that you should be getting new canes that come up every year. And if you don't, it's pH, okay? And the other thing to understand is that blueberries get their fruit on the ends of the canes. So you would never like prune the top of the canes off because that's where most of your fruit are. All right. So very important. The first 2 years, you get rid of the flower buds. That's basically the only pruning you have to do. All right. And year 3, you're starting to get a nice little crop. All right. And sometimes some of these canes go off sideways, so you might cut some of that off. But that's all you really need to do. And then year 4 and 5, now you're really producing fruit. And you notice you should be producing 3 to 5 new canes per year. If you're not, it's pH. All right, it's pH. So here's another shot I took from Paul Eck's book. The plant on the left is not pruned, right? The one on the right in the middle, I took 1 out of 6 canes out. All right, and then the one on the right, we've done a little detail pruning. Just take out some of the twiggy growth. You really don't need to do that. As long as you take 1 out of 6, you're fine. So pruning correctly, it increases yield, increases fruit size. You decrease disease because those old canes get all these cracks in the bark, and that's where the fungus holds. And increased cane initiation, so you'll get more canes to come up. All right. And the one thing you don't want to do is, when I came down here, first, there were a lot of guys pruning the canes at like 10, 12 inches high. saying, oh, they'll get a cane from that. No, you don't. You have to prune the cane all the way to the ground. All right, all the way to the ground. That forces new canes up. Will you have to net? Well, I'm not sure. In the pine barrens, we don't net because we don't have town birds. We don't have thrashers. We don't have robins. We don't have those birds in the pine barrens. But down in Cape May, you may have some town birds, and you may have to go to Home Depot, Lowe's, and throw a net over the top of the plants when you start getting ripe. All right. This is a shot in Arkansas, and we were doing variety trials, and the whole acre was was netted, and you actually had to walk through a netted door to get in. Otherwise, the birds would just clean you out. There's a guy, Terhune Orchards up in Princeton, and he's got a planting of blueberries, and he has to do this very same thing. He has to net the whole thing. So there are some diseases. Upper left stem blight. When you get a cane like that, you don't have to spray for it. Just cut it out. These other three diseases, well, all I would say is if I have a berry like that, I wouldn't eat it, right? You really don't need to spray for this. Now, in a farm, that ships blueberries all over the world, they got to spray for this. But the upper right is mummyberry. You just don't eat it, right? Would it be a good idea to actually take it and get it out of the field? Yes, but you don't need to spray for this stuff. This is a nutrient deficiency in blueberries. Okay, you notice that the edge of the leaves is brown. Okay, looks like it needs water. And what one is this? Right, it's potassium deficiency. It's potassium deficiency. So, this is the typical what it looks like. It looks like it needs water. This plant was actually right next to the sprinkler head. So it was getting water, right? But that's what it looks like. Now, this one I didn't show you, but I always say that this one was put here by God on blueberries to remind whoever grows blueberries that you didn't check the pH. All right. This is iron deficiency. So yes, the veins are green, but this is up on top of the plant, not on the bottom. And you notice the top leaves are actually almost white. And so these leaves are iron deficiency. I mean, when a grower calls me up, I got a problem in the field, and he says, you got to come. I mean, I could tell 100 yards away this is iron deficiency, But, you don't want to make the farmer feel bad. So I go ahead and get out of the truck and walk around the plant a couple times and then turn a leaf over, and then I say it's iron deficiency. But the iron is actually in the soil. But if the pH is too high, it goes from Fe3 to Fe4, picks up another hydrogen, and so as a result, blueberry says, no, I don't feel like that, and so that means you got to take put sulfur on and lower the pH. His magnesium deficiency, you notice the veins are green and it's red in between. So this is at the bottom of the plant. So this is magnesium deficiency. So that's about it. You have my email address up top there. You can copy it down. I'm sure that you're going to get a question tonight, tomorrow, the next day. I check emails constantly every day. So and like I said, what Rutgers says, we are here when you need us. So we are. If you have any questions, please let me know. All right. If you didn't get that handout, let me or Jen know, and we'll get you the $50,000 sheet. You realize with like 27 people on there times 50,000, let me figure that out. Well, that's over a couple $1 million, I think. So that I passed out today. So Jen, are there any follow-up questions we have to cover?
No, I think just thanks for a great class. So once we've got the recording back and figure out how to upload all of that stuff, I will send out a link to the YouTube channel, just if anybody wants a refresher. And I put both Gary's and my email addresses in the chat box. Also put the Rutgers.edu, the publications addresses up there as well. I check my email every day. I check my voicemail every day. Sometimes on the weekends because there's not a lot for me to do. And I'll we'll help you out as best we can.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully we can all get together sometime in the future. I really think my jokes work a lot better when there's an audience.
Yeah, I was glad that my video and my mute were on because I was snort laughing, even though I've heard the sod joke before.
Yeah. So thank you very much, everybody.
And the members only jacket. Are you the last member? I don't know.
That's right. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you guys in person sometime soon. Okay, but email me if you got a problem, and remember, you can always take a picture of any problem and email it. And I fix a lot of problems just through the computer. So be well, and have a nice Memorial Day weekend.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, everybody.
See you, Jen.